how to be profitable in 2024.
Marketing has really changed.
That there is a path to a career within our practices.
Change your website geared more towards them.
The multi-generational communication conflicts.
People aren't coming to you because you're an in-network provider. They're coming to you because they want a beautiful smile.
This is truly what's on the mind of orthodontists.
You know, having that high level of service.
This day and age, it's all about differentiating yourself.
So happy to be here.
Hey, Jill, thanks for joining us.
Devin, I'm so excited to be on this. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say about these topics.
Well, yeah, I've been racking my brain about it. So let's see. Where do you want to start?
Well, if it's all right with you, let's just jump right in.
Yeah. Sounds
okay,
good.
Great. In your opinion, and I mean, you work with lots of practices all over the country. What are you hearing, or what do you think is on the mind of every orthodontist that they just don't have a solution for?
I think, what I hear with, from my startup docs to my existing practices is just team retention right now. I think that is something that we have always dealt with in our industry, but we have definitely also seen quite a change in this. As I've been doing this for over 30 years, there used to be a time when we would have employees in our practices that were going to be there potentially from the beginning to the end. And now what we are seeing is, if we can get, 2 to 3 years out of an employee, that's great. And a lot of times we aren't even getting that. So I think just that employee retention and buy-in to the practice. And what I see as an issue is really having employees see that there is a career in our industry, and not that it is a job that they are using as a stepping stone to something else.
I think that's really, really insightful. And I'm a huge believer that leaders, business owners should be kind of leaning into their problems as part of a solution.
Yes.
And so kind of, you're thinking about it that way, how would you suggest, and you kind of hit on that as on the career side, but what are some things that you would recommend to listeners where they can lean into these obstacles as part of the solution?
So I think it's become very apparent in our industry and what we're hearing, out within, just secular news as well, that a lot of the younger generations are not necessarily leaning into maybe going to college or, doing, I'll say, industries of the past, right? And, if I could give advice to, our doctors, if we could really get our heads around the idea that our industry is more like a trades industry, and people who are coming into our industry, besides the doctors themselves, of course, any doc that's listening, of course, you got to where you're at because of the schooling, that got you there. But if you think about it, most of the employees that are coming into your practice and as employees are not coming to it because they went to school to get into this industry, right? Instead, if we were to kind of put our brains and think about it more like a trade, and I like to use the analogy of the electrical trade, where, you've got, kind of entry level employees are, more of that, entry level. And then, we've got, and then they, as they, move up in the industry, they become a journeyman. And then from a journeyman, they become a master electrician, and if we can kind of think about as employees are entering our practices, and we can kind of lay out for them a path to a career instead of a job that, we're out there posting a job posting and they're looking at it as a job, a stepping stone into something that is a career. And I feel like if we could just really lean into that and lean into teaching our employees that are coming on that there is a path to a career within our practices, and switching our mindset on that a little bit, and how we pay even, and how we engage them and show them that path to a career, I think that will in turn start to have employees that are looking again, like in the past, as our industry as something where somebody can be like, hey, I'm really proud to be part of that industry and I want to stay within this industry versus move on to something else.
I think that's great. So giving them just showing them the picture, the bigger picture here. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it comes from, something as simple as, and this is going to make somebody cringe out there, but transparency and pay, and I think that sounds so foreign. For so many years, it's been like, whatever the guy behind the curtain says is, going to be your pay, and it's a secret, it's a secret as to what we make. But if we think of it a little bit more like a trade and we are telling our employees, hey, we want to invest in you. And if you you're going to start at a certain level, maybe as a level 1. We'll use, assistance. I think this is a good one. Assistance is easy to kind of differentiate. In a level 1, they're going to have a certain amount of skill sets that they're learning or that they're going to do. And if we can tell them, hey, you're going to make between, and I'm just pulling this number out here, so nobody hold me to it. Don't shoot me hate mail or anything. $20 to $23 for an entry level 1 assistant. And if they want to improve and stay within the company and they want to move to a level 2 assistant, here's the next level and all the things that you have to learn, and then if you want to move to that level 3, maybe you're the trainer in the office and you've got all these extra skills. We're basically showing them a path to a career, but we're also showing them a path to profitability. But what we are taking away is that you just get paid for longevity, and it's a secret when and if you get paid. And I really think that that's what our generation is looking for. These newer employees coming into our practices, they are looking for, well, how do I plan my life? And if you can't even tell me if I'm going to get a raise or not, maybe I'm going to get something, maybe I'm not. Of course, they're going to look somewhere else, because that's what we all want, is security and a path to profitability, a path to a career.
I love it. So I've got 2 questions. So number 1, well, I guess a comment and kind of a question. So I have lots of friends in other industries where, the pay scale is exactly what you're talking about. If they break up the different jobs into different levels, and each level has a pay range, and then you have some bonus opportunities within that pay range, maybe. I guess I love that idea. And I think that's great. So that's kind of the comment. But then the question is, to get to the next levels, in your opinion, what is the responsibility of the employer to provide training and education? So should they be training and educating in office? Should they be paying for the employees to go to different events to get better training? I think if I'm an orthodontist out there and I'm thinking, okay, well, so now I'm paying somebody $20, $23 an hour entry, right? And should they be also planning on a budget for sending them or getting them educated? So what are your thoughts on that?
I think honestly, it's a little bit of both. Obviously, I do think that it is on the employer to set up how your employees move through your practice, within each of the core areas, kind of the pay, we'll call it pay levels within those areas. And I do think it takes some work and some time to come up and say, like, how do I define what an entry level, again, we'll just use assistant, what an entry level assistant is, what that looks like and what they should know and what tools am I going to give them to learn this position? And then as they move up, and if they, have, checked with maybe their trainer and, they have passed maybe the little tests and they've, passed the time tests and they can, maybe name the instruments, or I don't know, we've got examples of this that we give, our doctors when we're helping them, come up with this, these different levels. Then what does a level 2 look like? Of course, we're going to expect that they, can stay on time. They have more responsibility in the office. They're doing this, that, or the other. And maybe with that next level, maybe there is some opportunity because you're going to invest in them. They're investing in you. Maybe they do have, an opportunity for continuing education, or they can petition for an opportunity. Imagine that, somebody coming to you and saying, hey, I've done an investigation here and I really want to hone my skills on this particular, technique. And I see that there is a course coming up and I would like to go to it. And here's the reasons why. Oh, mind blowing, right? Versus you saying, okay, everybody, who wants to spend their, Saturday going to this, conference and everybody's like, well, do I get paid? Do we You know what I mean? Like all the negative things that make doctors go, I don't want to take my teams to anything because they don't appreciate it. Imagine if the team members are the ones who are coming and because they want to better themselves, because they want to move to that next level. And the thing that I want doctors to hear me say on this too is we have to be okay, in my opinion, with team members not always wanting to move to the next level. And I think just naturally, because we tend to be, I'm a business owner, you're a business owner, we're all business owners. We naturally want to, we just think that everybody has that drive to move to the next level. And here's the deal, docs, I just want you to hear me on this. Not everybody has that drive, and it's okay because we don't need all level 3 employees in our practice, and we don't need all level 2 or level 1s either. We need kind of a nice array of that. And I think sometimes we get so in the habit of thinking that we need to push everybody to be at that next level, where we may have somebody that gets to level 2. They are really, really excellent at level 2, but they would be a horrible level 3. They wouldn't be a manager level. They wouldn't do well at that. And almost we're pushing them into something that they're not going to succeed at or not be happy at.
I love that. I love that idea. So thank you for sharing that. And I think the doctors listening or anybody listening will hopefully they're taking a bunch of notes because I mean, like, oh my gosh, this is great. Well, so Jill, I'm a huge fan of your podcast. I listened to it. I think it's awesome. It's kind of overwhelming for me to have you on the other side of the microphone here.
Geez. Oh, thanks.
But it's great because you're normally the one asking the questions and getting everybody else to kind of give their thoughts. And so it's really awesome to have you share your thoughts with us. Could you tell those that are listening a little bit about who you are, what you do, and maybe even just where they could find you if they're interested in learning more?
Yeah, sure. So in the event that you don't know who I am, which is very possible for sure, I am an orthodontic consultant. I've been in this field for a little over 30 years. I run a consulting business called Jill Allen and Associates. We primarily focus on startup docs and doctors who are doing acquisitions. I've kind of coined the phrase 8 years and younger. We do a lot of training in that realm with team members and doctors in that. But just because we work with startups doesn't mean we're a startup company. We've been doing this for 18 years now. I've got proven, systems in place. So we do work with a lot of existing practices. And a lot of times when we're working with those existing practices, we are, working a lot of times team members or doctors have had change in their teams. Maybe the institutional knowledge is no longer there in their practices. And they're like, I need to get systems in place or I need to get things updated. So that's where I spend a lot of time. And then as you alluded to, I do a podcast called Hey Docs that comes out every Thursday. It's out on all of the forums out there and then also on YouTube. And then as far as how you can get a hold of me, I have a website, which is www.practiceresults.com. If you go on to that, and you go to talk to Jill, you can just fill out a little information. It takes you right to my calendar link and you can be talking to me, as soon as you schedule something.
Here we go. It's as easy as a click of a button.
It is easy as a click of a button.
Gotcha. And we'll put the link in the comments or in the section below. So everybody can find you. Well, we've got a couple more questions. This is we're taking it now. We've talked a lot about the individual practices. I kind of want to bring in the industry vision here, and it can be overall industry, or it can be kind of how a practice fits within the industry. It's really up to you, but where do you see that practices in the overall industry are really vulnerable right now?
Right now, and I'm going to speak to just kind of where we're at April 2024, and I know that's going to date this podcast just a little bit, but I feel like right now where practices are really vulnerable is really in. I think we've got a lot of instability going on just within our economy, which is then in turn playing into new patients coming into our practices and then in turn to our starts. And so I think, and then that bleeds into, our employees and not having the employees, there. So, just that little bit of, we went from having a really, really, I think, even though we went through COVID, some pretty strong years where now things are a little bit more questionable. And we're really having to think about flexible financing and, maybe some third-party financing and, really kind of watching our dollars when it comes to marketing. And we need to do, we hear from the marketing companies spend more money, but yet, our bottom line is going, I don't know if we should be spending more money. So I think that we have to be, and I think a lot of practices are really being mindful. And I think that, some of the issues are just, getting those new patients in and getting them started, but keeping them safe financially.
I think that's great insight. Well, so then if we move from that, then, and where do you think that practices and the industry are positioned for success?
So I think almost, some of the counters to what I just said. I think where we are positioned for success is to, know that we need to be more flexible with our patients and their patient financing, being open to, maybe lower down payments. And I say this cautiously because I'm going to have a startup doc that's like, but Jill, you said we have to be, we have to hit these numbers. And I think it's a little bit different for a startup practice than a existing practice. But overall, being a little bit more flexible with our down payments, being a little bit more flexible with how we are allowing patients to take their payments, maybe extending them over a period of time. I think just trying to find ways to make it easy for patients to say yes to treatment is one of those areas.
It's great. And, I was just going to say, so, I've now been in the industry long enough that, some of the talk that you're sharing is a little bit reminiscent to like 2008,
Yes.
right? Where it's not a cliff coming, but we need to be making some changes. And I think a lot of the changes that you're recommending are things that I even heard people saying back in 2008, but like nobody was ready for some of those. They were just so far out of the box. And so I think now we're going to see a lot of people take some of these suggestions and really run with them, because either they lived through 2008 and they saw maybe hindsight is a little bit 2020, or just we have technologies and we have different things in place now where it makes it easier. Would you say that that's true?
Yeah, I would 100%. And, it's funny that you bring up 2008 because, back in, I was of all the times to start a consulting business, I started in 2006. So if that kind of tells you, the temperature of where things were at for anybody who doesn't know, we were definitely going through a recession at that point. And one of the things that is really interesting that we were doing, that number one, that caught a lot of doctors off guard. And I do think it is worth for anybody, any doctor listening, if we can look at the past and learn from it. One of the things that doctors did not see when that recession was coming was the fact that their production was going down, but their collections was still coming in. And why did they miss that? It's because, you kind of get to a point, especially in bigger practices, where all that you really care about is that AR and that consistent money coming in. Just a little reminder, what we produce in 1 year, we tend to collect over 2 years. So in 2006, when everything started hitting, for the next 2 years, even though their production was going down, if doctors weren't watching that closely, they weren't keyed into it because it didn't affect their bank account. Where it affected their bank account was 2008, 2009, 2010, because for the previous 2 years, they had not been producing the way they had been. And so now there's this scramble of, oh my gosh, we got to get rid of employees, or, I can't pay my bills. And it was because we did not see it coming. So, I don't want to be a doomsday sayer, but one of the things I would tell doctors is, now more than ever, pay attention to your production and make sure that you are aware of how your collections and your AR are paying out. But speaking to the payment component of it, bringing this is, I didn't mean to get on a tangent here, but speaking to the payment component of it, one of the things that we were doing back at that time was doing a lot of third-party financing, which was absolutely like, nobody wanted to do that, right? We were barely into accepting, moving away from coupon books and accepting payments, on a credit card, let alone, the fact that we're going to now advise somebody to go out and put their orthodontic treatment onto a credit card, right? But what I'm seeing now within our industry, and I am advising a lot of our doctors is, and we haven't had to do this because we've had such a strong economy, is that I do think that there's a place, once again, for third-party financing, because it allows, again, those patients to potentially get started with no money down, take payments out over a very long period of time. And that company is shouldering the burden for it. And in our offices, yes, we may pay a little terminal fee for it, but still we're getting paid up. So our liability of worrying about payments is off of us. And now we can just treat the patients and be happy with it. So I think that if we were to look back a little bit and see where we were and see where we are now, and I think where things are going a little bit, it's smart to look backwards to look forwards.
Yeah, I love it. Well, so if I would kind of sum up, I mean, you gave a lot of great points in there, and I hope people maybe even go back and listen to it because there's so much there. But so doctors need to be not only paying attention to things that they can do to make sure they're maintaining production, or at least be aware that production might be slipping. They also at the same time need to be looking at expenses now so that they're not blindsided in 2 years. And then we also need to be looking at payment structures for patients, kind of a 3-pronged approach, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
I love it. Well, so as we wrap up, and Jill, this has been great. I mean, I think we've got a lot of stuff here that I think people will really learn from. So can you wrap it up with 1 to 3 bullet points that are like, hey, I'm listening to this and something I can kind of maybe bring into the office tomorrow, right? What are like 1 to 3 takeaways?
I think a takeaway, let's just talk about payments again. If you haven't really looked into it, really, go back. Almost all of your softwares will be able to tell you, just look back at how are patients accepting when patients are saying yes to treatment. What's the most average down payment that they're doing? Have you seen a change in that? What's the most average monthly payment that they're making? I think just looking at that and saying, can I be more flexible? Like I tell my docs, you could, and you should feel comfortable if they're set up on auto payments. Take them a minimum of 3 months past the longest time they could be in treatment. If they're set up and, paying monthly, like maybe something that simple could change the difference of a $250 payment down to a $200 payment that could get maybe even just a few more yeses on the books. Another thing is, I think just look for low-hanging fruit in your practice. There are always easy ways to shore up, that low-hanging fruit. Like I tell my docs, just imagine the difference if you know what your TC converts at. And let's say you're a practice that is maybe converting, 60, 70%. Imagine just a 10% increase. You don't have to do any more to get new patients in. You just have to dial it in that conversion just by 10%. Imagine what that does to your bottom line. And then the last one, when it comes to team members, I think, really think about if you are having a lot of turnover in your practice, what are the common denominators there? And, is it culture? Is it that you've got really great employees, but every time they're leaving you, they're telling you that it's because they're moving on to going to vet school. I'm going to cosmetology school. I'm going to, and that, maybe that's enough of a catalyst to have you go, okay, how do I need to put something in place or start thinking about a way to put something in place for a path to a career in my office.
I love those 3 points. Thank you for wrapping that up. So great. Yeah,
for sure.
Well, so we've got one last question for you, and everybody, this has been a lot of fun for me to ask. So,
oh no,
so I'll kind of set it up for you, and those that have maybe even listened to this a few times kind of know, but I'm a big fan of story and using story to propel our brands and and enter into the story of our customers and for our clients and our practices that we work with to really, enter into the story of their patients and understanding where their patients are coming from. There's so much that can be done with that. However, there are 2 things that make a really great story, and that's a really good villain and a really good hero. So kind of in light of story being something that's really important, who or what is your favorite villain and who or what is your favorite hero?
Okay, I think I can do this, even though I'm not great at this. I'm going to say, and this is going to go kind of weird here. I really like Pink as a hero, and I know that sounds really crazy, but if you know her story, and I just think she is this really strong, fierce woman who, can do acrobatic things and sing. Like when, if you've ever had an opportunity to watch any of her documentaries or anything, I just like her. I like who she is and what she's done. So as strange as that is, I would say on the spot, she's a good hero for me. As far as a villain, I'm not going to name anybody in particular, but I feel like, that there are a lot of, and I'm just going to use this very general, think of a villain as, anybody who preys on anybody who, maybe is not, doesn't have enough experience in something, or, maybe doesn't have a lot of knowledge. I am an advocate for the little guy. And, it burns me up to see companies or people who prey on, maybe somebody who, the weak, or, somebody out there like that. So I can't necessarily say that I could name a specific company, but just in general, that behavior, I would fight somebody over that. I mean, and I probably have come close a couple times to when I see, injustice being done. I can't help myself. I'll be the first one stepping in.
So maybe injustice is the villain, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I would also say, I think there's a lot of responsibility, and it's just speaking from the way that we view our business, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with being a vendor to somebody else's business. And you don't take that lightly, and you certainly want to be an advocate for where they can propel themselves forward, where they can, utilize all that you're offering to their business. And I think far too often, kind of to your point, practices view the companies not like partners. And I don't know about every company, but I know our company, we really strive to be a partner.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And a partner has the other one's best interest at heart as well. And so I think I love that you bring that up, because I do think that, and this isn't unique to our industry, every industry, if we could look at it from the point that, hey, these companies that are serving our business, their best interest is that our business stays in business.
Yep.
So they're really not out to get us or charge us more, or, try to cover up something. I mean, they're really in it they should be, at least. So I love that you bring that up, because I think injustice in a business relationship isn't going to get you very far.
No. And it just, that's something that, it just makes my heart hurt. And I know that there are a lot of people that are not in it for the right reasons. And there are a lot of people that are in it for the right reasons. And those ones that are not, those are the ones I don't want to be a part of. And I hate to hear when people get duped by that sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And I thank you for giving us an opportunity to think about that. And also, I'm glad you clarified that Pink the singer, because I wasn't sure if you're talking about Pink the color, because I know like Pink the color is like your color.
It is, and you see me in it a lot, but no, it is. And I didn't choose pink, my color, because of her either. I just like her strength as a woman. And I think it just empowers women in general.
I love it. Well, Jill, this has been a lot of fun for me, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to share your expertise with our listeners. So thank you very much for being part of this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Well, we'll have to do it again.
Yes, for sure.